Welcome to a new week, a new show, and more importantly, a new season of Formula One action. I'm your hostess with the mostess, Samantha Johnson, and here's what's coming up on today's show. Yes, we are ready, and we've got the legend that is Lewis Hamilton on hand to go through this highly anticipated Formula One season. Also on the show, we take a trip to where it all began for the seven-time world champion Lewis Hamilton and ask whether another title is on the way for the boy from Stevenage. And we hear from the F1 analyst Rachel Downey on how motorsport is tackling a lack of diversity. The new Formula One season has everything a motorsports fan could ask for. New names, new teams, and a driver on the verge of making history. And it all starts with the Bahrain Grand Prix this Sunday. Tyler Duman takes us through what to expect in 2021.
The 72nd season of F1 starts with a very familiar question. Who will dethrone seven-time champion Lewis Hamilton? His team Mercedes, who have dominated the grid since 2014, have some idea.
I would say Red Bull are ahead on performance. They're the class act from the test, but it's a test, it's not a race, and it's one event out of 23. Are we going to have a close season? I would say so.
Max Verstappen's Red Bull topped the charts at preseason testing in Bahrain, and along with new teammate Sergio Perez, the Dutchman's confident they can put up a good fight for this year's title.
I hope that as a team, we can make it difficult for Mercedes, especially because I think they still are the favorites. So, yeah, I just hope as a team and together with Sergio we can score those points.
Perez is one of 4 drivers who changed teams this year. Daniel Ricciardo went to McLaren, Sebastian Vettel left Ferrari after 6 years for new team Aston Martin, and Carlos Sainz replaced the 4-time F1 champion at the Prancing Horse. Last year, Ferrari finished a miserable 6th in the standings, and the Spanish driver says individual success will have to take a backseat this season if they want that to change.
I think there's something more important we have to keep in mind, which is taking Ferrari forward together, rather than focusing on our own battles. If there's one year I think we have to work well together, it's this one.
There will be lots of new faces on the grid in 2021. Arguably the most intriguing is Mick Schumacher. The German is looking to follow in his father's footsteps and was overjoyed after trying out his Haas in Bahrain.
Any lap is great in the car. I learned from the first lap to the last lap, and if it's only 15, well, I take them. It's better than nothing. So happy to be in the car, happy to be able to push at times and try some things.
F1 will also be trying out a few new things this year. The 2021 calendar has the most races for a season with 23. For 3 of those GPs, the sport will trial sprint qualifying to spice up the weekend action. And for the first time in Formula One history, there will be a cost cap, limiting teams to a budget of $145 billion. A whole lot of unknowns for this season, especially with COVID-19 still around, but with the playing field more level than ever, an exciting, action-packed, and unpredictable F1 season is right around the corner. Talha Duman, TRT World.
Right, who better to tell us what to expect from the new season than Mr. Lewis Hamilton? And Morris, first question, is there a huge air of excitement when it comes to this new season?
Yes, there is. It's always the case. You've got a couple of months off and you can't wait to get going again. You get drivers changing teams. You've got new cars for everybody. There's all the rumors, anticipation, and so on. We've had 3 days of testing in Bahrain. So we've got a little bit of a feeling of what's going on, but you don't really know any answers to any of these questions until they start racing properly, until they really get going. So if we're talking about Lewis Hamilton, can he win the championship again? We don't really know, which is great. So that's a good way to go into the start of a season. Lots of unknowns.
Brilliant. And it's literally an open race. Let's zone in on some of the teams, and we're going to start with Red Bull. Now, they ended the 2020 season with a win in Abu Dhabi. Do you think that they can actually carry that momentum into the new season?
Yes, which is great. All the signs are good. Normally Red Bull, what happens is that they start the season not very well, and they build up and up and up, and they get to the end, and they're really on it, which is too late. But this time, in the test I just referred to in Bahrain, they were actually on it from the moment the testing started. So that's great, because we haven't seen that before. And what it means that apart from them appearing to be quicker than Mercedes at this stage, very early days, it means hopefully that Max Verstappen is finally going to have a car capable of getting him into a competition with Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes. That's what we've been waiting to see now for 5 or 6 seasons, and it looks like we're going to get it. I think Red Bull really are on the case, and also what's important is that their engine's a Honda engine, and this is the final season in Formula One for Honda. They're going to pull out at the end of this year, sadly, but they want to go out in a blaze of glory, and they put a lot of work into their engine for this year, a new engine, and it seems to be working really well. So all the signs are good that Red Bull finally are going to be competitive from day one.
Well, even Lewis Hamilton said that, you know what, they are a different animal right now. Do you think this is a real cause for concern for Mercedes?
Oh, yeah, no question. I mean, they are worried about it, because what's happened in the past is that Red Bull have had flashes of brilliance, and Verstappen's won a couple of races and been there to give them something to think about, but they haven't been consistent. And what Mercedes have seen in this test is, while Mercedes had problems with the instability of their car, particularly at the rear end, you saw Lewis Hamilton spinning a couple of times, which gives you an indication of, you know, how difficult that could be. Red Bull have been really quick, and Mercedes have recognized that, and they've gone away. And they also know that although all the paperwork shows that Mercedes have dominated the past few seasons, Lewis Hamilton's been champion, made it look easy. In fact, what's happened is that when Red Bull have come good, they've pushed Mercedes, and Mercedes have started to make mistakes. So Mercedes know that if Red Bull have a consistent attack in 2021, they could be pushed and pressured into making more mistakes. So yeah, it's all to play for.
Okay, let's move on to the character that is Sebastian Vettel, and he's got a bit of a change of scenery after leaving Ferrari after 6 years. Look, do you think his fortunes are going to change now that he's joined Aston Martin?
I do, actually. I mean, people are writing him off because he had a pretty dismal time at Ferrari. He just couldn't handle that car, basically. It was a tricky car, and he just wasn't comfortable in it. And also, we had Charles Leclerc in the other car, who's this bright new star of the future. So he was giving him a hard time. But the thing you've got to remember about Sebastian Vettel is that he has won world championships before. He has been consistently good. In that Red Bull, when he won his championships, you know, when he won 4 titles with them, he was at home in that car, at home in that team. He's gone to Aston Martin, it formerly was Racing Point, and before that, various other names. But that's where he is now, and that's a smaller team. There's none of the political pressure that he had at Ferrari, and they're going to build that team around him. So he is expecting to do well, and I think he's got a lot to prove. I think he's still got the ability. You don't lose the qualities that he had when he won those championships, and that speed that he had when he was with Red Bull. So I think he's going to grab this chance and come back. I'm not writing him off at all.
Okay, let's move away from the teams for a second and on to new additions to the season. Look, what do you make of the new sprint race at Silverstone before the 2021 Grand Prix? I mean, does the sport really need this? And I know you're itching to say something about this.
Samantha, I'm old school, and I don't like to see change. And I don't like to see change for change's sake, just to admit that something's wrong and try and hype it up a little bit. But saying that, the jury's out as far as I'm concerned. Let's give it a try. I think what's sensible about 2021 is that they're going to run it in 3 races just to see how it works, which is good, because you've got to do that, I suppose. And let's see if it brings in more interest. I think the important thing for me is, if you're going to have a qualifying race, so long as it doesn't detract from the main event on the Sunday, the Grand Prix, I think that should not be devalued in any way. And from what I'm seeing is that won't be the case, because they're only going to give a few points to the first 3 finishers, I think is the proposal at the moment. That may change, but that won't detract from the main event on the Sunday. So let's give it a try. Let's see if it brings excitement. I mean, personally, I think the way qualifying is structured at the moment, and it has been for 3 or 4 years now, I think that works really, really well. But it's kind of an admission that, all's not well with Formula One, that we need to bring more excitement. That's true, but that's because the cars can't run in close company. That's a different story. So they're putting a sticking plaster over a wound, and, as far as I'm concerned. But let's wait and see.
Okay, Morris, old school Hamilton. Thank you very much for joining us. Okay, so record-breaking title number 8 is on the horizon for Lewis Hamilton, but where did it all start? Oliver Reagan takes a look into the Mercedes driver's backstory, his rise from humble beginnings to the top of world sport.
He's the record-breaking multi-millionaire F1 world champion, but Lewis Hamilton's early life was anything but glamorous. Brought up in the English town of Stevenage, Lewis's dad worked multiple jobs in order to fund his son's racing hobby. And for those who still reside in his hometown, Hamilton's journey from council estate to global superstardom is something that makes them very proud.
It puts Stevenage on the map. It's very important that a Stevenage boy has gone on to the global scene, brings back some of that warmth and kind of, I think, aspiration for young people living in Stevenage. So very proud to be associated with Stevenage and what Lewis has achieved.
If you're prepared to work hard and put the effort in, he's shown that anything's possible for anyone, which is, you know, a good motivation for young people.
Despite his recent success in F1, Hamilton hasn't always been on top of the podium. After winning his first title with McLaren in 2008, it took him 6 seasons before he was able to emulate that with Mercedes, as Sebastian Vettel and Red Bull took charge.
He had a tough time with McLaren after his initial success in 2008, but that was because other teams were much more successful, Red Bull in particular. But once he joined Mercedes and we got into this new hybrid era, Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton have been almost unstoppable. But for his season when he lost out to Nico Rosberg, that's pretty much the only blot on his copybook. Otherwise, he has been supreme and he's become the supreme force. He's fired up by adversity. The more difficult it becomes or seems, the more he'll go, right, I'm ready for this and I'm going to raise myself to another level.
Well, this is the go-karting track where a young Lewis Hamilton first demonstrated his driving ability. He used to dominate down here at Rye House Raceway, just as he's gone on to do in Formula One. And ahead of the new season, there's now just one target on his mind.
And that is to win an 8th World Championship, taking him above Michael Schumacher on the all-time list, after he also surpassed the German's record for most Grand Prix wins last season.
To be unique in Formula One, the only driver to have achieved 8 World Championships would be a huge achievement. And even more so, I think, because he is the only black Formula One driver ever so far, that will be a huge legacy and it will mean a lot. The only thing he hasn't yet beaten Michael Schumacher with is fastest laps. Schumacher's got 77, Lewis Hamilton's only got 53. So that's something to aim at if he's still got the appetite and the hunger. But to be the only man with 8 Formula One titles would be absolutely massive.
If Hamilton manages to break the record he shares with Schumacher this season, that and significant regulation changes from 2022 might mean he walks away from the sport. But whatever he decides to do next, the boy from Stevenage's achievements will be hard to beat.
No lies detected there. And someone who knows exactly what it takes to get to that ultimate level in Formula One is the friend of the show, Jason Tangiolu. Jason, long time no see. Thank you for joining us on Beyond the Game. Now, you know Hamilton's journey very well and what sacrifices he and his father had to make to get to this point. Can you just give us an idea of how difficult it actually is to get to this level?
Well, first of all, Samantha, it's good to see you as well. Good to see you well as well. And but yeah, I mean, coming back to Hamilton, my God, when you think about it, motorsports is one of the most expensive sports actually, and even to be able to race at go-karts at a high level, you need to have some serious budgets. And obviously, you know, coming from the background they had at the time, you know, it was really hard for Senior Hamilton to actually maintain a budget for his son Lewis to race. And obviously, we know the stories. He was doing double shifts, and he was actually running a few jobs, you know, just in order to show that Hamilton actually has a chance of being recognized of, you know, over what a talent he is. And in the end, eventually, the time comes, and you know, Ron Dennis sees this magnificent driver, you know, displaying his talents at a young age on the go-kart circuit, and then he becomes a McLaren driver. But yeah, a lot of effort, a lot of sacrifices were made by senior Hamilton and obviously Hamilton family in order to Lewis to actually start his career at a level where he is recognised and becomes the person he is right now.
Well, it goes without saying that we both witnessed history in Istanbul last year, November, one of the most iconic race weekends ever when Hamilton claimed his 7th world title. Is it too much to say that it's going to be inevitable that he's going to get his 8th this season?
Well, nothing's for sure. I mean, we saw how he's been dominating the last decade, effectively, of the sport, and having 7 titles in the pocket is a magnificent, success story. And all he wants is obviously the 8th in order to actually be the ultimate in terms of, the figures and ranks and be the greatest of all time. Is it possible? I don't know. It all depends on obviously how the cars will perform, if he's going to run into any bad luck, and obviously most importantly, how the competitors are going to actually perform on the circuit as well. The silver hour has always been quick. It has been very quick for the last so many years. It just depends how much they've actually improved their cars since last year, where they've been dominating, obviously, but less than dominating for the last 3-4 years, and see what they can actually put on top of what they had last year. However, I'm really curious to see whether, obviously, the Red Bull are going to be up there, and if the Aston Martin is going to be up there. I mean, I think it's going to be a lot closer than the previous years, and I really hope for the sport itself it's going to be a lot closer. But deep down, I want to see Hamilton get his 8th title and basically, announce that he is the greatest of all time on paper as well.
Jason, always a pleasure having you on the show. We'll speak to you really soon. Now, it's fair to say that Hamilton broke the mould when he burst onto the scenes as McLaren's first black driver in 2007. He took the racing world by storm, winning his first title just a year later. 6 championships down the line, he's now looking to inspire the next generation, but with increased diversity in a white, male-dominated sport. Peter Frank says this one.
When you think of Formula One's great drivers, you think of Fangio and Stewart, Hunt and Lauda, Senna and Prost, Alonso and Raikkonen, or Schumacher and Mansell.
Or he was passing Senna at Hungary in absolutely impossible conditions. This man is a superstar.
All white men spurring each other to greatness as the public watch on entranced. When Lewis Hamilton burst onto the scene in 2007, he changed the narrative and inspired a new generation of fans.
Finished on the podium for the first 7 races and leading the World Championship by 10 points. I would never have imagined doing that, so it's definitely beyond my dreams.
He came close that year, but lost out by a point to Kimi Raikkonen.
Very disappointing for Lewis Hamilton from my point of view, but I'd sooner Raikkonen won than Alonso.
He won in 2008 and dominated after taking Michael Schumacher's seat at Mercedes in 2013. But some things haven't changed.
At the beginning of last year, I remember looking around in Australia, around the paddock, and I remember I filmed it on my Instagram, and I remember it's still no diversity within this paddock.
In 2020, the 36-year-old equalled Schumacher's record of 7 titles, but in 2021, he says his focus is on driving change.
This year, it's all about pushing for diversity and really making sure that action is taken. So that's kind of at the core of the drive for me.
Another challenge for F1 is to get women involved. Maria Teresa de Filippis competed in the 50s and Lella Lombardi the 70s, but since then, involvement has been limited. Williams made inroads with Susie Wolff, and now Jamie Chadwick as development driver, but the sport needs to push on.
I want to race at the top level and race against, like I said, the best in the world, and whether that is 21 other male drivers on the Formula One grid or 21 other female.
Inclusivity and diversity are well-used terms nowadays. Fans and drivers alike hope Formula One can lead the pack in driving real change. Peter Franks, TRT World.
Right, let's get the Formula One journalist Rachel Downey into the conversation about how motorsport is evolving. Rachel, as always, thank you very much for joining us on Beyond the Game. Now, what does it mean when teams like Williams and Alfa Romeo get women to be their development drivers? Is there a real meaning behind this, or is it just for show?
Oh, there's definitely a meaning behind it. I mean, to be a development test driver for any team, it takes years. It takes skill. It takes winning at races. I know with Jamie Chadwick being the Williams test driver. Now, this is a driver that's won the W Series, about to start the Asian F3 Championship. It's more than just for show. For anybody to get that opportunity is incredible, and it's such a big positive step forward for women in motorsport and for getting more women in motorsport. I'm very excited that they're doing it, and I think other teams will follow if they can have enough women to choose from. I think that's the big thing here, is if you get enough women up there. So yeah, I think it's a great thing.
Okay, well, let's take a look at Jamie Chadwick for a second. She's been racing since 11 years old. Do you think she has what it takes to break the gender barrier in Formula One?
You know, it's all to do with super points. That's how you get to be an F1 driver. You've got to win enough championships, get enough points to be able to get yourself up there on the starting grid. So yeah, she is, I would say, our most positive, lightest hope to have a female F1 driver over the next few years.
Okay, let's talk about another pivotal movement that happened last year, Black Lives Matter movement. Similar to the gender barrier, how soon do you think Lewis Hamilton's efforts on making Formula One diverse will come into action?
Years. It's going to take years. Because if you think about it, for instance, with F1, it starts all at the grassroots. So great to see an F1 driver, female F1 driver, but you've got to get the females involved in karting. You're starting right at the grassroots level. You want to see more female engineers, more female diverse engineers, diverse mechanics. Well, it's going to take years of studying, of training. The way you make that change is what Hamilton's doing. It's that visible representation. It's seeing Hamilton up there and, you know, younger kids want to become him, you know, maybe recognize themselves in him. That will take years because it has to start at the very beginning. So, you know, it's great what he's doing. We've got Extreme E starting, which Hamilton's got his own team in Extreme E. Extreme E, you have both male and female drivers racing alongside each other. Again, that's great because you're watching something and connecting with that and seeing the males and females compete together. But it's going to take years. And, you know, the thing with motorsport is it's all about money. You know, sponsorship equals a race seat. If you're going to have a male driver, female driver, at the moment, both look for sponsorship deals, it's going to go to the male driver because, well, there's no female drivers. Whereas hopefully in about 15 years, if you have that male and female driver, the sponsorship will go to the best driver. And that's why something like the W Series is incredible. So, yeah, I think what Hamilton's doing with the Hamilton Commission, fantastic, but you're not going to see a change for about 10, 15 years max, I think. And that's probably me being quite nice with it. It will take time, but we'll get there, definitely. With motorsport, we will get there.
Well, I think you're right. It is going to take years, and it's great that Hamilton is leading the way. And what we do need to see are other teams taking up that mantle as well. And it's got to be genuine. It's got to be organic. Yeah, it will take years. I will not disagree with you on that one. But in terms of diversity for the sport, look, what are the positives going to be once the sport opens up? I mean, you know the industry better than I do, than a lot of us. What benefits are we going to see?
Oh my God, it was just become a place where both it's not sexist, it's not racist. It's, you know, I've spoken quite openly about this as a female in motorsport. There's a huge aspect of it that is sexist. It is. I've been there, I've witnessed it. You know, once we can have, you know, once it's more diverse, once it doesn't matter if you're from, you know, it's a gentleman's sport, remember? That's how it was described and always has been described, a gentleman's sport, a white middle-class sport. So once we get rid of that taboo, once we can shake that off, it doesn't matter what your background is. It doesn't matter. You know, I got into motorsport a lot later as a presenter because, you know, it always felt like it was unattainable for me. So imagine, you know, if you want to be a racing driver and you don't come from money, it's unattainable. You know, Hamilton was lucky he got signed up by Mercedes when he was very young because he was sponsored. He didn't need to find that money. Motorsport is so expensive. But if you look on the flip side of it, we've got on Netflix Drive to Survive. And yes, if you are a big motorsport fan, there's a lot of holes in Drive to Survive. But it's brilliant because we are bringing a new audience into motorsport. Right now, it's about getting more people involved into motorsport. Esports. We've got a lot of F1 drivers taking part in esports games. That's great because we're getting a new breed of fan involved in F1. I think when that day in the future, when, you know, it doesn't matter what your background is, it doesn't matter if you come from money, it does not matter, where, you know, anyone can take part in motorsport if you're brilliant at it. And you know what, if you don't want to take up professionally, just to be go-karting and it be equal would be fantastic. So it's going to be an amazing thing when the doors are open. It's great for F1, obviously, you know, with the new rules coming in place. But again, there's still going to be the big teams being successful over the smaller teams, and it's going to take time for that change.
Rachel Downey, you can lead a sermon on Formula One. Yeah, thank you so much for joining us on Beyond the Game. I can listen to you all day about this. We'll get you on the show really soon. And that's it for this special edition of Beyond the Game. Thank you so much for joining us. I will see you very soon. Bye.